You don't talk to me like that. The slap came fast, sharp, echoed through row 3 like turbulence. Every conversation in first class cut short. Heads turned. Silence landed. The woman in seat 3A didn't flinch. She sat still, her cheek reddening, her breath measured. The flight attendant Jessica Cole, 34, brunette, badge slightly crooked, stood over her with a trembling hand, an eye still blazing from whatever she thought justified the hit. Passengers froze. Seat belts clinked. A baby whimpered in row 7. But the real shock didn't come from the slap. It came from the silence that followed. Because the woman who had just been assaulted didn't scream. She didn't cry. She reached into her coat pocket slow, precise, and pulled out a single AirPod. No shaking, no anger, only control. Jessica stepped back half a pace, realizing too late that something was off. The woman's posture didn't say victim. It said storm. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down." Jessica snapped, voice shaking now. "You're making the other guests uncomfortable." Seat 3B, a man in a blue blazer, leaned toward the aisle. "Uncomfortable," he muttered. "You just slapped her." "Sir, please stay out of this." Jessica shot back, louder than necessary. And then came the whine. Soft, measured, devastating. "I suggest you remember this moment very carefully, because the seat number you just struck belongs to the person who can shut down this entire airline." Gasps, audible ones. Someone in the seat said, "Wait, what?" under their breath. A phone camera clicked on without permission. Jessica blinked. "Is that a threat?" The woman smiled slightly, not wide, just enough to warn. "No," she said, still calm. "That's a forecast." Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Ava DeClaire. She was 44, elegant, no jewelry, no designer logos, just soft black pants, a high-collared cream blouse, and leather boots polished like her reputation. No assistant, no entourage, just her breath, and now, one open call line. She tapped her AirPod, a soft chime, then, "Tara," she said. The voice on the other end replied instantly. "Yes, ma'am. I'm listening." Ava didn't blink. Login onboard incident. Flight 4472. Between Denver and JFK, first class. Physical contact. Hostile service. Slap. Verbal escalation. Time code 1403 Eastern. Jessica was still hovering, her face paling by the second. "I didn't mean." But Ava held up one finger. Not toward Jessica, toward the cabin camera in the corner. It was recording. Always was. Row for C, a college-age passenger with an NYU hoodie, whispered to his seatmate, "Bro, she just documented the whole thing like a lawyer." His seatmate replied, "Nah, like a CEO." Jessica Cole took a step back, not from guilt, from something else, something she couldn't name yet only feel. It wasn't fear. Not exactly. It was the sense that the woman she just slapped wasn't alone. Ava DeClaire sat perfectly still in seat 3A. The hum of the jet engines pulsed beneath her boots like a ticking clock. She didn't look up. She looked inward. "Tara," she said again, voice quiet but unwavering. "Cross-check our exclusive contracts with airports under Horizon Aviation Group." A pause. Then Tara replied, "We're the largest operations vendor at 9 of them." "Why?" Ava's gaze never left the back of the seat ahead. "Because a system either corrects itself or it gets corrected." Jessica stared at her like she was trying to do the math. "You're threatening the airline?" Ava finally turned her head. Her voice didn't rise. Her tone didn't change. "I don't make threats. I write terminations." Behind her, row for C shifted again. The NYU hoodie kid mouthed "damn" and hit record. Seat to ban older white woman and Pearls leaned over the aisle, visibly uncomfortable. "What did she do?" she whispered to no one in particular. Jessica answered, louder than needed. "She refused to follow instructions. Got aggressive." Someone scoffed from the back. "Yeah, we saw how aggressive she was when you slapped her." A ripple of murmurs rolled through first class. No one moved. But everyone was awake now. Ava tapped her AirPod again. Tara, activate Echo 7. Yes, ma'am. Tom stamped. Incident filed under corporate breach. Jessica's hands fidgeted at her apron. She turned to walk away, then stopped, spun around. Look, I didn't know who you were. Okay. You don't look like someone important. The moment froze. It wasn't the words. It was the honesty. Ugly, raw, unfiltered. Ava blinked once, slowly. She remembered something. 17 years old. First solo flight. Wearing her mother's Sunday blazer. One size too big. Gate agent looked her up and down and said, "Honey, standby is at the back." She had a confirmed seat. She sat in the terminal for 2 hours until someone apologized. She never forgot. She never forgave. And now here it was again. New uniform, same dismissal. She exhaled, not in frustration, in precision. Like she was measuring what needed to come next. I wasn't trying to start something, Jessica mumbled. Ava finally stood. Not fast, not theatrical. Like gravity chose the moment to acknowledge her. She stood as if the floor rose to meet her. You didn't start anything, she said. You just made sure the ending has an audience. Someone clapped once. It echoed too loud. Then came a second. Then 4 more. Jessica looked around, confused, then panicked. She reached for her radio. Captain, I need. But her headset buzzed with static. The crew channel wasn't responding. Rhoda Dalton's young man in a fitted suit spoke up. Captain's not answering. He grinned. Probably because this flight's already on the ground corporately speaking. Jessica's face drained. She opened her mouth to reply and stopped cold as Ava's voice returned, softer now. Tara, send the cabin footage to our legal team. Flag every second since minute 14. Yes, Ms. DeClaire. Already uploading. That name, DeClaire. It hit like a dropped wine glass. Jessica whispered, Wait, DeClaire. Someone across the aisle gasped. Ava DeClaire. The tech investor? No, someone else corrected. The one who owns the air logistics group. Ava didn't respond. She didn't need to. She just looked out the window 30,000 feet above. But already far. Far above the people trying to contain her. The plane kept flying. But the power? It had already shifted. Row 6A, aisle seat. A teenage girl in a faded stem as power hoodie pressed her phone tighter to her chest. She had been filming silently since the slap. Not because she wanted clout. Because something about this felt like it needed remembering. Her name was Riley Cho, 16, Korean American. Traveling alone to a robotics conference in DC. But right now, she wasn't thinking about algorithms. She was thinking about dignity, and how easily it could be stripped from some young ages because of how they looked. She stood up. Excuse me, she said, loud enough to carry past row 4. Everyone turned. I saw everything, Riley said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't resist. She just got hit for existing. Jessica turned, eyes flashing. You need to sit down, miss. This is a sensitive matter. No, Riley cut in. Her voice was trembling, but rising. This isn't sensitive. It's shameful. A flight marshal from row 1 turned his head. He hadn't moved until now, but Ava's calm, Riley's voice, and the word marshal beginning to buzz in the back of everyone's mind. That combination pulled tension tighter. Jessica tried to regain control. She's escalating the situation. We were just following protocol. Slapping someone is protocol now. Is that a man in row 5B? That's not what I meant, Jessica began. But it was too late. The tide had shifted. Ava DeClaire didn't speak. She didn't need to. Witnesses were now standing. Ms. DeClaire, said Tara's voice in her ear. We just received an alert. JFK, O'Hare, Dallas, Miami, and Seattle have all been pinged with an audit notice. Ava nodded slightly. Send a memo to our Eisen's executive board. Use the phrase, contingency clause alpha. Tara paused. You want to activate? Yes. Full compliance freeze. Let the airports know this is a client-level shutdown, not a tantrum. Jessica looked toward Ava. She heard none of the conversation, but she could feel it. The kind of silence that only came from someone already 5 steps ahead. She tried again. Look, this isn't personal. I didn't know who you were. Ava looked up, finally, directly at her. That's the problem, she said. You think you need a reason to respect people. I don't need your recognition, she only needed your professionalism. Row 3B, the man who had watched everything from inches away, finally spoke. She sat down quietly. She didn't demand anything. If she had looked like me, you wouldn't have questioned her. Jessica turned to him, stammering. You don't know that. Yeah, he said, voice steady. I do. In the back, Riley had resumed recording. This time not for proof, but for people like her mom, her little sister, people who needed to see this story told right. This is how we fix the system, Riley whispered to herself, by not letting it gaslight us in midair. Suddenly, a ding. The fastened seatbelt sign blinked. A chime from the cockpit. Ladies and gentlemen, came the pilot's voice, calm but shaken. We've just received a reroute notification. This flight will be making an unscheduled landing at Indianapolis International. Gasps spread like wildfire. Jessica turned toward the intercom panel, confused. We weren't due there. Ava turned slightly, her voice directed to no one and everyone. 9 airports don't wait for permission when they receive a call from the client who funds them. Jessica's face blanched. Her hand dropped from the wall. She didn't reach for the intercom again. Wrote to an elderly black man with a walking cane and nodded slowly. I've flown this airline for 22 years, he said. Never thought I'd see justice on board. But here it is. Riley smiled. And Ava? She sat down, crossed her legs, still composed, still dignified, but now surrounded by voices that finally caught up to hers. The captain didn't come out of the cockpit. He didn't need to. The silence from his channel was answer enough. Jessica stood frozen near the intercom, the entire cabin watching her now like a malfunctioning system blinking its last command. Then she did something she would later regret. She walked back down the aisle toward Ava, but her posture had changed. Not confident, not apologetic, desperate. Listen, she hissed under her breath. You can't just reroute aircraft. That's not how this works. Ava tilted her head slightly. She didn't raise her voice, then explain why it just did. Jessica's jaw clenched. I could lose my job over this. Ava didn't blink. You already did. Row for C gasped. Someone whispered, damn, that's a wrap. But Jessica didn't leave. She hovered like the wreckage of a failed threat, still trying to reclaim ground she'd already burned. I didn't know who you were, she repeated. And I didn't mean. Ava cut in. You keep saying that as if ignorance is an alibi. Jessica's hand trembled. Her mouth opened again. But before she could speak, another voice rang out. From the galley, Briante Jr. flight attendant emerged. He had been quiet the whole time. Now, clipboard in hand, he cleared his throat. I saw the footage, he said, from the cabin cam. Everyone turned. It doesn't look good, he continued, voice shaky. She was calm. You weren't. Jessica turned to him like he'd stabbed her. Brian, not now. He didn't back down. Now is exactly when. His voice cracked. I've worked 3 years to make Purser, but I didn't sign up to gaslight passengers on video. Someone clapped. Just one. Then more. Jessica's face flushed crimson. You're throwing me under the bus. Brian shook his head. I'm stepping off before you crash it. In 3A. Ava's eyes never left Jessica. She didn't gloat, didn't smile. She just said, Protocol Echo 7 logs every staff response during mid-air client escalation. You signed the waiver. You gave consent when you wore the badge. Jessica stumbled back half a step. Then she snapped. No one cares who you are, she barked, loud enough to jolt the rows ahead. You think you're untouchable just because you've got money. That doesn't make you right. That doesn't make you better. Row 6A Riley stood again. No, she said, voice stronger now. But slapping someone mid-flight sure makes you wrong. Jessica whirled toward her. You want to be next. You think recording everything makes you some kind of hero? But now, even row 1 was watching. The older black man leaned into the aisle again. Child, he said to Jessica, not unkindly. You lost this battle the moment you raised your hand to a woman who didn't raise her voice. Jessica stared around. No allies left. No power left. She turned one last time to Ava. You don't belong in first class. The words were quiet, bitter, small. Ava looked at her. Then why do I have the only name on this aircraft whose call caused the sky to shift? Jessica opened her mouth, and suddenly, the seatbelt chime rang again. Tara's voice pinged through Ava's AirPod. Ma'am, Indianapolis Tower just grounded all Horizon gates pending incident investigation. JFK is preparing formal statements. Legal has flagged Jessica Cole's name and is running prior passenger complaints. Ava nodded once. Not a smirk, not satisfaction, just forward motion. Then she spoke, calm and final. Ground me once, and I'll ground you forever. Security protocol not active. Remove her device. The words came not from Jessica but from the intercom. For a beat, no one moved. Then from the front galley, another voice answered. Acknowledged. It was the captain, finally speaking, but not to the passengers, to the crew. Jessica straightened like she'd just been validated by a higher power. She took 2 quick steps forward and reached for Ava's lap. For compliance, she muttered. Her fingers closed on Ava's iPad. And then it happened. She didn't just take the device. She snatched it, yanked it from Ava's tray like she was confiscating contraband. The sound of metal scraping against plastic shot through the cabin. Everyone flinched. Ava didn't. She simply looked up. Not shocked, not angry, just ready. You just crossed the line between protocol and theft, she said. And this aircraft just crossed the line into a lawsuit. Jessica clutched the iPad like a prize. But her hands were shaking. So was her voice. I was told to. No, said a voice from behind. It was Brian. Captain said to secure the device, not assault the client. Jessica spun. She's not a client. She is a liability. Brian didn't blink. She is the largest shareholder of the airline group. You just grabbed corporate property from its owner. The word owner landed like a gavel. C2A, the older man let out a soft whistle. Row 6 airily whispered to her phone. This is going to be on CNN by tonight. Jessica's mouth opened, grasping for any version of the truth that hadn't already dissolved. Then from the intercom again, the captain's voice. Jessica Cole returned to galley immediately. Her spine stiffened. She didn't move. Ava stood. No rush, no anger, only gravity. She stood like a decision had just been made. You just escalated this to federal level, Ava said, and this cabin is now considered hostile. Jessica backed up, still clutching the iPad, still breathing like she might recover the narrative. You think I'm scared of your titles, she spat. I've worked 20 years to get here. You think some tech woman in nice boots can break me? Ava took 1 step closer. No, she said, low and clear. But your own choices just did. Jessica hurled the iPad to the floor. It hit hard corner first, skidding beneath seat 3B. Gasps. Someone shouted. That's assault. Riley ducked to retrieve it, her voice shaky. It's cracked, she said. The screen shattered. Jessica stepped forward, chest heaving. You're all so soft. This isn't racism. This is reality. Power doesn't bend for feelings. From row 5A, a woman stood up. Blonde, business suit. I'm sorry, she said. Did you just say power doesn't bend for feelings to the woman whose company owns your uniform? Jessica's mouth opened, but there were no words. Not anymore. From Ava's AirPod, Tara's voice came through again, steady and clear. Ma'am, FAA oversight just pinged your incident file. You now have direct observation from federal audit, all verbal and physical interactions flagged. They've requested final action log. Ava nodded. She turned to Jessica one last time. The slap was the spark, but the theft, the damage, the insult that was the storm. She bent, picked up the broken iPad with calm hands, held it like evidence, and spoke to Tara. Proceed to Echo 7 Phase 3. Mark the entire flight crew as active participants. Jessica blinked. What does that mean? Ava didn't answer. She just looked at her with eyes like judgment and a tailored blouse. Roto A, softly. It means you're not landing with a job. The iPad still trembled slightly in Ava's hand. Not from her. From what it represented now, a shattered device, and an even more fractured chain of command. She turned slowly, facing the rows ahead. Rows now filled with silent allies, held breath, and phone cameras still rolling. Then she spoke. This is no longer a passenger complaint. This is a breach of federal aviation trust, corporate conduct, and human dignity. No one interrupted. Even Jessica didn't speak. She stood frozen, still halfway between the aisle and the galley, as if trapped between roles she could no longer claim. Ava tapped her AirPod. Tara, redirect the Echo 7 protocol to General Counsel. Begin full documentation delivery. Include footage. Mark timestamp 1426. Yes, Ms. DeClaire. Legal team is standing by. Transcripts sensing now. A pause. Then Tara added, also, Manuel Moore Airports just froze Horizon gate clearances, 9 total now. Ava nodded. Her voice was steady. Notify Horizon executives the client-level recall protocol is in effect. Effective immediately. Jessica flinched. You're pulling contracts. Ava looked at her. I'm pulling permission. Jessica's lips parted, stunned. This wasn't just punishment. This was erasure. Across the aisle, the man in 3B turned toward her. You know what's wild, he said. She gave you so many chances to walk away. Jessica didn't respond. She couldn't. Briante Jr. Attendant stepped forward again, holding the cabin manifest. Ms. DeClaire, I've initiated a staff integrity log. I'm submitting my own report independently. Ava looked at him, not with pity, not with praise, with recognition. You stood up, she said. That's noted. Jessica laughed sharp, bitter. Oh, now you're keeping score? Ava faced her fully now. I've always kept score. I just never needed to show I'd until someone decided to test the silence. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the intercom. This time, not the captain. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Indianapolis Control Tower. You are currently under FAA observance. Please remain seated. Flight staff will stand by for legal debrief upon landing. Jessica's face drained completely. Roto A chuckled softly. FAA on the line. Ma'am, you grounded more than the plane. Riley leaned forward from 6A, phone still in hand. Miss DeClaire, do you want me to stop recording? Ava turned, eyes calm. No, this is public now. And then she walked. Not stormed. Not marched. She simply moved through the aisle like a woman walking through her own office. Past the galley. Past Jessica, who stepped aside without instruction. She paused by the flight attendant panel and pressed a button. The intercom beeped. For the record, Ava said, I am activating Section 8 of the Horizon Compliance Clause. Every train crew member on board knew what that meant. Client override. It had never been used midair. Jessica whispered, That's not real. Brian responded, flatly, It is. You just never expected someone to remember it. Ava turned once more before returning to her seat. I don't scream. I don't beg. I restructure. She sat down, crossed one leg over the other. The cabin, silent, but the sky, now belonged to her. Seat 3A had never felt this quiet. Not because the engines had dulled, but because the room around Ava DeClaire had changed. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was a force race centering the cabin. Jessica sat in the galley now. No headset, no clipboard, just silence. Brian stood nearby, hands still on the cabin manifest like it mattered. But all eyes were on Ava. Even the captain hadn't spoken again. Then Rota D broke the silence. She really can do that, the man asked quietly. Shut down contracts mid-flight. From Row 5C, someone answered. She didn't shut down anything. She just reminded them who opened it to begin with. Ava tapped her AirPod. Tara, patch me through to Horizon Aviation boardroom. Secure line. Yes, ma'am. Executives on standby. Looping an external counsel and investor group. There was a pause. Then, you're alive. Ava stood again. This time, with the entire cabin watching like it was a press room. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just aligned. Like gravity was working for her. She walked one step into the aisle, looked to the camera in the panel above row 1, and began. This is Ava DeClaire, primary shareholder of Horizon Aviation Group, chairwoman of Skycore Global Transport, and executive contract holder of 137 international airport logistics zones, including 9 that have now frozen access to this airline. Gasps, some audible, some just internal, the kind that shift how you see someone forever. She continued, on this flight, I was physically assaulted. My property was seized. My status questioned, not because of a mistake, but because someone looked at me and didn't see me. She let that sit. They saw skin. They saw gender. They saw silence and mistook it for insignificance. Jessica flinched in the galley. Brian didn't move. Ava turned slightly, addressing both the boardroom and the plane. I have quietly invested over $2.7 billion into modernizing your aircraft logistics, staffing protocols, and conflict training models. Today, that investment ends. Now the cameras weren't the only things recording. Passengers began raising phones, some in awe, some with shame in their eyes. Because now, the truth had a name. Riley in 6A whispered, "She is the Ava DeClaire, the one from the Skycore launch." The woman next to her nodded, teary-eyed. "My daughter reads about her in her business class." The intercom crackled. Captain's voice, subdued. "Ms. DeClaire, we just received formal notice. FAA investigators will meet us on the ground. I've been instructed to step aside upon landing." Ava replied calmly, "Confirmed." Then she faced the cabin one last time. This wasn't a meltdown. This was a mirror. For every person who ever doubted someone based on what they wore or how quietly they moved. She returned to 3A, sat, folded her hands. "I'm not just a passenger," she said, more to herself now. "I'm the weather system you failed to check before takeoff." Seatbelt signs were still lit, but nothing about this cabin felt secure anymore. Because it wasn't just turbulence in the air now, it was turbulence in hierarchy. Jessica sat slumped in the galley, her hands trembling, face pale. She tried to press the crew line intercom. Dead signal. Disabled. Brian stood at the forward jump seat, glancing between Ava and the emergency procedures booklet like one might flip pages, hoping for forgiveness. His voice finally broke the silence. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "what happens now?" Ava didn't look up. She was reviewing something on a backup table freshly delivered by a senior passenger, who offered it without a word. "Kindness doesn't need a title," she answered without raising her voice. "Legal takes over. FAA completes the incident report. The board finalizes the withdrawal. And your employment records." She looked at him now. "Will reflect who you were when it counted." Brian swallowed hard. "Thank you." From row to A, the older black man shifted in his seat. Watching Jessica now was something close to pity. She was so loud before, he muttered. Now she can't find a single word to save herself. Jessica stood suddenly, as if defiance could undo documentation. She staggered forward. "This isn't fair," she blurted. "I didn't plan any of this. I was just doing my job." "No," Ava interrupted, finally looking her way. "You were doing what the system taught you to do, until the system met someone it couldn't ignore." Jessica's eyes darted around. No crew came to her aid. No passengers interrupted. Row 3 below had watched it all unfold, leaned back, arms crossed. "You're not sorry," he said. "You're just surprised there were consequences." Jessica turned to him, voice breaking. "I've given 20 years to this airline." Ava replied before he could. "And I've given 20 years building the infrastructure that made this airline scalable. Yet somehow only one of us still has a seat at the table." The words didn't shout. They landed. The intercom lit up againly this time, from outside. "This is Indianapolis Ground Tower. Flight 4472 is cleared for emergency gate. Federal team standing by. Do not disembark without instruction." Jessica flinched. Fought Federal. Standing by. Words that sounded like verdicts. A child in row 7 whispered, "Mom, is she in trouble?" His mother replied, "She disrespected the wrong person, baby." Then came a new voice. The captain, walking into the cabin. First time since the flight began. His face was tense, jaw tight. He didn't look at Ava first. He looked at Jessica. "Miss Cole," he said, formally. "You're relieved of duty. Hand over your badge." Jessica blinked. "What? Now?" She hesitated and slowly removed her lanyard, placed it in his hand. Her fingers shook the whole time. The captain turned to Ava. "Ms. DeClaire, on behalf of the crew, I offer a formal apology." Ava stood, not in anger, just closure. "Captain," she said, "an apology means very little if it only arrives after a title is revealed." "But noted." He nodded, said nothing else. Ava turned to face the cabin. "I don't expect justice in every room I enter. I'm used to silence, doubt, and underestimation. But I never leave without shifting the air." The entire front of the plane rows 1 through 6 sat in reverent stillness. Riley, in 6A, lowered her phone, eyes wide. "I'm gonna be talking about this flight for the rest of my life," she whispered. Ava looked out the window. Runway in sight now, tarmac glinting under Indiana sunlight. They were landing, but for some, this was the end. The wheels touched down at Indianapolis. Soft, but the silence inside the plane was harder than any landing gear. Outside the window, black SUVs were already aligning beside the jet bridge. Flashing badges, dark suits, efficiency. Inside, the tension sat like fog. Jessica hadn't spoken since surrendering her badge. Her hands were clenched, face downcast, eyes fixed on the floor as if willing it to open and take her anywhere but here. Ava remained seated. No triumphant pose, no smirk, just calm. She tapped her AirPod once. "Tara, initiate Phase 4. Lock Horizon Aviation Group out of all current Skycore tech integrations. Confirm, Mom. Remote operations severed. All access suspended. Automatic redirect protocol in progress." From seat to sea, a man in glasses whispered. Did she just shut down the airline's back end mid-taxi? His wife whispered back, "No, she shut down their future." Ava turned to Brian, who now stood nervously by the jump seat. "You'll be contacted by the oversight board," she said. "Tell the truth. Don't perform it." He nodded, eyes shining. "Yes, ma'am." The captain's voice echoed from the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. Federal inspection will begin shortly." Then came the sound everyone had waited for. The hiss of the door unlocking. But before it opened, Ava stood, walked slowly to the front of the plane. Her steps were silent, but final. At the galley door, she turned back to face the entire cabin. Not just the passengers, but the moment itself. To everyone watching, she said, "Let this flight be a message. Privilege is not position, it's practice. And power isn't proven when shouted. It's confirmed when you don't have to." No one blinked, not even the children. She held up the cracked iPad. "This device will go to legal, but the memory of today, that goes to every system that thought silence meant surrender." Then she looked directly at Jessica, who finally raised her head. "I wasn't your problem," Ava said, voice low. "I was your test, and you failed it at 30,000 feet. Jessica opened her mouth, but nothing came. Ava turned to the flight door. And just as the agent from FAA reached up to open it, Ava's voice rang out one last time. "Terminate Horizon's multi-year contract with Skycore, effective immediately. Notify competitors we are reassigning access." The agent froze. "Ma'am." Ava handed him a card. Black, metal, single embossed line. "Ava DeClaire Executive Authority." He nodded, opened the door. Sunlight poured in, not bright, but sharp, like a blade. Like a beginning. As Ava stepped through, someone clapped, then another, and another. By the time she touched the jet bridge, the whole cabin was applauding, not because they were told to, but because they understood now what it meant when silence carried weight, when dignity sat in 3A, and somewhere behind her, Jessica whispered to herself, What have I done?" But the answer had already flown ahead. By the time Ava's heels touched the marble floor of the terminal, the internet had already taken off. The Claire flight trended #1 in 11 countries. Videos clipped from seat 6A had amassed for 0.2 million views in under 2 hours. The footage, the slap, the silence, the name drop, and the walk. Headlines ping like heartbeats across every news screen in the airport lounge. Black CEO grounds airline mid-flight after racial incident. Executive power. Ava Declare ends billion-dollar contract in 37 minutes. Flight 4472. A lesson in underestimating grace. Inside Horizon Aviation's Manhattan headquarters, panic was no longer behind doors. Emails flooded. Legal scrambled. 2 investors resigned. 3 senior executives requested emergency board meetings. And 1 publicist sent out a 4-sentence apology. That no one believed. A board member muttered in the hallway. We could have de-escalated. We just didn't think it would go this far. But it wasn't that it went too far. It's that they were never built to go this high. At Skycorp Global, however, the atmosphere was different. Composed. Precise. Ava walked into her private operations wing. Her assistant Astad ready with a summary binder. Status, Ava asked. Full termination executed. FAA audit completed. Press inquiries rerouted to legal. Riley Cho's video has been requested by 3 networks. She declined. Said she'd rather post it herself. Ava nodded. Good. Let her own her voice. Tara hesitated, then added, There's a growing thread about the power of your silence. They're calling it the quiet landing. Ava raised an eyebrow. Smirky just once. Poetic. In another wing of the building, internal staff watched the clip again. Not for gossip, for training. Look at how she never raised her tone. One intern whispered. She owned every second without needing to defend herself. Others took notes, not on what was said, but what wasn't. Back in the world of public response, Horizon stock dropped 13%. Major airport contracts announced pending review, and whistleblower reports flooded in years of mistreatment, suddenly unafraid. Jessica Cole's photo circulated, but not by Ava's doing. It was passengers recalling past offenses who brought her name forward. Ava never commented. She didn't need to. Power didn't pursue pettiness. It documented it and then moved on. On a quiet street in Harlem that evening, Ava walked alone. No security, no cameras, just her. She passed a coffee shop window, paused. Inside, a girl sat with a laptop, headphones on, watching the footage. Paused on the moment Ava said, "Iris structure." The girl stared at the screen like it wasn't a video, but a mirror. Ava kept walking. That night, the front page of the Washington Post read, "One call, one calm voice, 9 airports." Ava Declare doesn't yell she writes altitude. It was 9:37 p.m. when Ava pulled into the underground garage. No entourage, no cameras, just the soft hum of an electric engine and the echo of heels against concrete. She stepped out, blazer slung over her shoulder, keys already forgotten in her palm. Tonight didn't feel like triumph. It felt like return. The elevator opened on P1. A man stood inside, holding a bouquet of tired flowers and a paper coffee cup. He stepped aside instinctively, eyes never leaving the floor until they reached her face. Recognition, then discomfort, then history. "Ava," he said. The voice was deeper now, older, but familiar. She blinked. "Mr. Harrington, 9th grade, debate club, guidance counselor, the first adult who ever told her she was a little too assertive for her own good." "You still working at the high school?" she asked, stepping in. He chuckled nervously. "Retired last year. Doing part-time admin for the district. Keeps me busy." Then, after a beat, I saw you on the news today." She didn't answer. The elevator closed. "I wasn't surprised," he said quickly. "But I was reminded." She looked at him now, not with anger, with memory. "You told me Harvard would chew up girls like me," she said. "Too blunt, too ambitious, not balanced enough for leadership." He winced. "I didn't mean it like." "You meant it exactly like that," she said. Silence. They reached the penthouse level, a soft ding. Before stepping out, Ava turned to him. "I needed you to believe in me. You chose to fear me instead." Mr. Harrington looked down. "I was wrong." Ava tilted her head. No, she said. You were early. He frowned, confused. She stepped out into the corridor, cool lighting dancing on the floor. You doubted me before the world did, she said, not turning back. And that gave me time to prepare. Inside the penthouse, Ava moved quietly through the space. White stone, warm wood, no portraits, no trophies, only a single shelf near the window, books, blueprints, and one photo. Her mother, smiling, holding teenage Ava in that oversized Sunday blazer creased, proud, defiant. She poured tea, sat by the glass wall, city lights blinking like quiet applause. She pulled out her phone. Riley had just posted the clip, captioned simply. She didn't demand the mic, she built the platform. Thousands of comments, thousands of girls, women, men, writing in languages Ava couldn't read, but all saying the same thing. I saw myself today. She smiled, closed the phone, looked at the skyline. Reflected in the glass, her face was calm. But behind the eyes, blueprints, not for revenge, for redesign. Because Ava DeClaire wasn't just rewriting policy, she was rewriting possibility. At 11:58 p.m., Ava stood on the rooftop. No press, no team, just the wind, and the city she helped reshape without asking permission. Behind her, the penthouse lights glowed soft. Ahead, the skyline blinked like a constellation made from her choices. She sipped her tea lukewarm now, didn't mind, because tonight wasn't about heat. It was about clarity. She pulled out a small recorder, an old habit from her early days pitching to silent rooms. Not for publication, not for proof, for preservation. She clicked it on. They say power corrupts, but they never talk about how invisibility does worse. How being overlooked chips at the spine before the soul even has time to speak. She paused. Wind brushed her coat sleeve. She kept going. I never needed a title to lead. I needed space to not apologize for how I enter it. Today, a woman got slapped in it just with a hand, but with the centuries behind it. And she responded in it with a scream, but with a system. Because justice isn't noise, it's design. A faint siren passed far below. The city never fully sleeps, and neither did she. To every girl watching, who's ever been told to sit down, smile softer, dream smaller. Let them laugh. Let them look past you. Your quiet is not a weakness. It's a waiting room for strategy. She clicked the recorder off, set it down beside a glass vase of fresh lavender. Not for show, for grounding. Then she picked up a blank card, signed it with a sharp ink pen, folded it, slid it into a file marked next phase. Inside, a new project. Not legal, not tech, a program for girls like Riley. Funded, staffed, ready. The logo was stamped in silver. ELMB. Every loud no begins in silence. Ava stood at the edge of the rooftop. One deep breath. One last glance. Not down. Forward. Because this wasn't the end of a flight. This was the lift of something larger. And as she turned back toward the door, her voice echoed in her mind. Not spoken, but certain. I don't chase justice. I build where it will land next. Fade to black. Roll credits. The sky. Silent. But different now. Because someone once sat in 3A and changed its altitude.